Thank you very much, Mr. Alok Rara. I'm welcome all who are participating today, especially Mary Taylor Holmes, IPO Director, USAID, my colleagues Pankaj Batra and Vicky Agrawal, but most of all, I welcome the panelists in the order Moniruzziman, Deputy Secretary, Energy and Mineral Resources, Government of Bangladesh, Karma Penjo Dorji, Director, Bhutan Power Corporation, Mr. Ram Vinay Shai, former Power Secretary, Government of India, Mr. Madhu Prasad Betuwal, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Energy, Water Resources, Dr. M.N.S. Parvara, Additional Secretary, Policy, Technical and Research, Ministry of Power, Sri Lanka. First of all, I welcome you all at this event of cross-border energy trade and energy security for South Asia. However, I should say that this goes much beyond energy security. It also includes benefits of climate change. It includes the benefits of saving investments, making more energy available at much less cost, and utilizing the regional resources in a regional perspective and most economic manner. Some of our works found that how power capacity utilization improves in every country, and we can do more with much less. And it's also about friendship and peace. That is very important in today's world. We have seen that our governments have done their jobs by starting this whole process way back from 2012 onwards. They have done agreements at the Prime Minister level between India and Bangladesh, India and Nepal, and so on. But now it's time that this can be professionalized, and our power sector experts, our grid operators, our power market people, our regulators, and so on, they all rise up to this challenge and make this whole trade far more on a solid pedestal. We have regularly engaged with policymakers and power generators, system operators, and so on. And all this does require different types of capacity building, energy regulation, progress in that direction. And recently, we have also, Indian government has opened up bilateral power trade to trilateral power trade also. And so that we have now really it's up to us how to take this further, and really the limit is quite high. We have now reached from 1200 megawatt to 33,800 megawatt, but the potential can be as high as 100,000 megawatt, and this could increase GDP by, let's say, improve Nepal GDP by 39% in our model by 2045. India's CO2 emissions can reduce by 5.4%, and so on. We have done this work and presented to all the people in the region, and we have all together held something like more than 100 events where various types of people have participated and given their suggestions, and it's strengthened our collaboration at all levels, and that is what's needed for ensuring that this is on a very solid and lasting pedestals, and it's not something can be blown away by the wind. And perhaps that's what I should thank USAID for pushing us towards more market-based transactions, and our colleague USAID collaborators for nearly 8 years have ensured this, and I thank Monali Hajra for it, my IRADe colleagues and Powerline people for making this event possible. And we hope that at the end of the seminar, we have more deeper understanding of cross-border energy trade. And we bring out important action points with the kind of expertise that the panelists have from all the 5 active countries today. I do hope that someday the other countries which are not active will join this deliberations at some stage. But we all look forward to regional energy cooperation and regional peace. Thank you very much for attending, and I'm glad to see that there is more than 150 participants today, and wish you all the best for very productive meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Parekh. In fact, we already have 188 now. As Dr. Parekh mentioned, the series is being organized by USAID South Asia Regional Initiative for Energy Program, Energy Integration Program, and implemented by Integrated Research and Action for Development, and facilitated by Powerline. We'll now have remarks by Ms. Honali Zia Hazra, and she is Regional Energy Manager at USAID for also clean energy specialist as well, has more than 20 years of experience, has managed several USAID clean energy programs. And before joining USAID, she led the Industry and Environment team at the Center for Science and Environment. Ms. Hazra.
Thank you so much, Mr. Barara. Good morning, everybody. On behalf of United States Agency for International Development, better known as USAID, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all the dignitaries present from South Asia. It's a pleasure to be here for today's webinar on cross-border energy trade and energy security for South Asia, jointly organized by SARI, or the South Asia Regional Initiative for Energy Integration, and Powerline. I am speaking here today on behalf of Ms. Mary Tyler Holmes, who is the currently acting director of USAID Indo-Pacific Office and has recently joined USAID India. Unfortunately, she was supposed to speak at this event, but was taken ill, and therefore I'm making this remark on her behalf. So with that on, let me just quickly deliver her remark. So South Asia is
We've lost her. We'll give it a minute and see if we can connect. Okay, I think she's back with us. Welcome back. Welcome back. You have to unmute yourself again.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. With joining on mobile, I just got a call and it got disconnected. It's my apologies for that. So South Asia, let me just quickly go back to the remarks. Apologies to everyone for the interruption. As we all know, South Asia is one of the fastest growing regions in the world, and energy plays a significant role in its socio-economic development. Ensuring access and availability of energy, especially in the form of electricity, is central to sustaining the region's expanding economies and its people aspiration. The United States government is deeply committed to enhancing energy security within South Asia, a goal USAID has been working towards since 2000 through its SARI program. SARI, as earlier was being mentioned by Dr. Parekh, is currently in its 4th phase, and it focuses on transitioning the region to trilateral and multilateral power trade and establishing the South Asia regional energy market. South Asia has both resource and demand diversity, which presents an immense potential for regional cooperation. Several studies have established the benefits of cross-border power trade, including optimized investment cost and reduced carbon emission, making it clear that cross-border power trade will be a win-win. As we find to end and ultimately recover from COVID-19, South Asia will play a vital role in building a more sustainable future with greater access to affordable, reliable, and clean energy. Energy cooperation will be a key pillar in facilitating this transition for the region. Now is the right time for South Asia to harness its tremendous clean energy potential, whether hydropower or renewable energy, and assume a leadership position in sustainable energy development. The region currently trades around 3,800 megawatt of power. However, that encompasses just a fraction of the vast potential that the region has to offer. As per a SARI study, the cross-border power trade in South Asia could reach as much as 60,000 megawatt through 2045. But it's heartening to note that the countries are recognizing the benefits of our regional power trade and taking positive steps to foster it. For example, in 2018, the Government of India's guideline on cross-border electricity trade allowed trilateral trade, which is basically trade in which neighboring countries can trade power using its transmission grid. More recently, the CEA, or Central Electricity Authority of India, notified the procedure for this trilateral trade and for neighboring countries to participate in power exchange. The government of Bangladesh is also investing in hydropower development projects in Nepal and Bhutan to further diversify energy resources. To this end, the Bangladesh Power Development Board entered into an agreement with the private power producer in Nepal to import hydropower. In April this year, Nepal joined the energy exchange market in India. As of July, the cross-border electricity trade with Nepal under the day-ahead market or energy exchange was 72 million units, a nearly 78% increase over this month. I understand that discussions are now also underway to include Bangladesh and Bhutan on the Indian power exchange. This will be a significant step towards the development of regional markets in South Asia. All these developments are expected to open the floodgate for accelerated cross-border electricity trade, which will ultimately enhance economic development and lower the carbon footprint of the region. Continued webinars such as this will provide platform for engaging discussion and deliberation to brainstorm on how we can boost regional power trade and establish a power market in mutually beneficial ways. I look forward to a stimulating idea and productive discussion that will certainly take place during this webinar and those to follow in the course of this series. Before concluding, I would like to extend my gratitude to all the dignitaries and experts who have joined today's discussion. I would also like to thank our implementing partner, IRADe, especially Dr. Parekh, Pankaj Batraji, Agarwalji and the SARI team for the partnership and effort, as well as Powerline, Mr. Alok Barara for collaborating with us on this event. So thank you so much. I wish you all rich discussion and deliberations. Please stay safe. Thank you. Over to you, Alokji.
Thank you, Ms. Hazra. We will now have Mr. Batra introducing the panelists. Let me introduce Mr. Batra himself. He's Project Director of South Asia Regional Initiative for Energy Integration Program at IRADe. And in his current role, is responsible for spearheading the SARI program and ensuring attainment of its objectives of promoting integration of energy systems and enhancing cross-border energy trade among South Asian countries. Mr. Batra is a thought leader in the power industry in India, has more than 3.5 decades of experience, including serving as chairperson of Central Electricity Authority. Mr. Batra.
Thank you very much, Alok. And at the outset, let me welcome everyone, the panelists, especially from all the BBINS nations, as well as participants who are also from the BBINS nations, as well as I can see, I guess, people from some gentlemen from Japan, Manila, etc. We'll get the details later, of course, but welcome all of you. A very warm welcome to everyone. As has been mentioned, there are a lot of benefits of regional energy cooperation and the trade, regional energy trade, which is primarily electricity, but also now going on to natural gas, is going to benefit the region, just as it has benefited many other regions in the world. So, as an example, Europe has benefited tremendously with gradual interconnection of countries, and now there are 35 countries in Europe which are connected. It started with just about 8 countries getting connected just after the World War I, because they wanted the system to be stable, and realizing the benefits, more and more people have got added on, countries have got added on, and there were earlier a number of regional cooperation as regions in Europe. For example, the there were some countries of Europe, there was some the Association of Transmission System Operators of Ireland, then of UK, the Nordal countries, as well as UCTE and the Baltic countries. So all of these then finally got all interconnected into the ENTSO, that is European Network of Transmission System Operators in Lexdi. And this was formalized in the year 2009 through a law or being acknowledged by the governments of Europe. Of course, it has taken quite some time, and it does take time for consensus building and others. But I'm sure that this will lead to, there are benefits of regional cooperation. Sometimes there are certain apprehensions, but all these get sorted out as time goes on. Now it's my pleasant duty to welcome all the panelists for the panel discussion, which will be coordinated by Alok Prara of Powerline. Dr. Muhammad Monirizm, he's Deputy Secretary, Energy and Mineral Resources Division of the Ministry of Power, Energy and Mineral Resources, Government of Bangladesh. He's been working in this since the last 4.5 years. He is responsible for LNG related works and development activities of gas pipeline projects. He is a BSc in Mechanical Engineering and Masters in Petroleum Engineering from Bangladesh University of Engineering and Technology, and MBA Finance from University of Dhaka. He's completed his PhD from the University of Birmingham in Energy Poverty and Energy Justice. He has recent publication on energy justice in Elsevier. Then Mr. Karma P. Dorji, he's Director, Department of Hydropower and Power Systems, Bhutan Power Corporation Limited, Bhutan. He's served as National Project Manager for Rural Electrification Master Plan 2003, which provided a critical roadmap for achieving almost 100% access to clean and reliable grid electricity by 2013. He was part of the core team responsible for the formulation of the 9th, 10th, and 11th five-year national plans. He obtained bachelor's degree in electrical and electronics engineering from PSG College of Technology, Coimbatore, India, and MSc in environmental systems with a major in energy, environment, and society from State University of California, Calcutta, USA in 2008. Mr. Ram Vinay Shahi from India, he was Secretary to the Government of India and Ministry of Power during the period 2002 to 2007. And during his tenure, he's widely credited for reforming and revitalizing the Indian power sector through the landmark Electricity Act of 2003, which liberalized the sector and initiated private investment in the Indian power sector. Prior to that, he served as the chairman and managing director of Bombay Suburban Electric Supply Limited from 1994 to 2002 in Mumbai, transforming it from a small power utility to one of the largest in the nation. He was also associated with NTPC for about 16 years and with Steel Authority of India for 10 years in various positions. He presently heads the South Asia Group for Energy in India. Mr. Madhu Prasad Bhetubal, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Energy, Water Resources and Irrigation, Nepal. He's an experienced senior engineer with a demonstrated history of working in government administration machine industry. Prior to the current role, Mr. Bhetubal served as Joint Secretary in the Investment Board of Nepal. So experience in both the power sector as well as in investment. Dr. M.N.S. Pereira is Additional Secretary, Policy, Technical and Research in the Ministry of Power, Sri Lanka. He has extensive experience in Sri Lanka's power sector, having worked in the state-owned power utility Ceylon Electricity Board for over 35 years. An electrical engineer by profession, he holds a BSc in electrical engineering from the University of Moratuwa, Sri Lanka, and PhD from the University of Pennsylvania, USA. I welcome all the panelists and before we start, would request everyone to put on their cameras so that we can capture your photos. Thank you. Shaisab, are you able to put on your camera? You're muted.
Mr. Shah, you have to unmute yourself as well.
Okay, I'm not sure whether he has reached because he was caught in a traffic jam. Maybe his system has been put in in place, but maybe he's not reached. Okay. So I'm not sure. There's been a lot of rain in Delhi, so he said he's stuck in a traffic jam. He's not sure when he'll be able to join.
We can try once again in the middle of the.
Right.
And I'm sure our social media experts will be able to get the images just right.
Have you been able to capture the photos?
I think we will.
I've also got the pictures.
We've got the pictures. Okay, great. Perfect. Okay.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Batra, are we ready to begin?
Yes, we're ready to begin. And maybe Mr. Shahi can be taken later.
Okay, that's fine. No issues. Maybe he'll join just in time. I'll be moderating the discussion, and I think you've received a number of questions from us. We'll try to group these questions under 3 headings, so to say. The first one is going to be benefits that you see and the potential. The second one is going to be challenges and issues, and the third one will be the next steps that we think we need to take. Again, to remind you, this is the first webinar. It is more higher level, more broader, and we'll get into more specific issues in the next 3 webinars. So my first question to you is, what potential do you see for cross-border energy trade, and what potential benefit do you see for your own country as it relates to energy security or otherwise? And what we are going to do is to have the answers in first question in order of the country's name. And therefore, we are going to begin with Bangladesh, and then we will go to Bhutan, and then we'll go to India, and then we'll go to Nepal, and then we'll go to Sri Lanka. For the second question, we'll come the other way around. We'll begin with Sri Lanka, and then go to Nepal, and then go to India, and then go to Bhutan, and then go to Bangladesh. So my first question to Dr. Moniruzzaman. What benefits do you see for cross-border energy benefits and potential for the region and for your country, sir?
Thank you very much. Good morning to all. The first thing is that cross-border energy trade will improve the bilateral relationship. That is the first point. And second point is it will improve the energy security. In the border areas, we have less potential of energy and power supply. So this area, people can get the energy and power if we trade properly with our neighbors, especially from India and Nepal. So it will improve the energy security because it will improve the accessibility, affordability, if the cost is reduced. I think when the generation of power and energy will be improved, economy of scale will exist and the price will go down. So it will improve our affordability as well. It will improve the reliability of supply, that is security of supply. So it will play a major role in energy security, to my knowledge. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Karma Dorji, if we can hear from you, sir, as well. Same question.
Thank you, Ji. If I can be heard.
Yes, perfectly.
Just for the record purpose, because I was introduced as the director of Bhutan Power Corporation, I think This is wrong. I'm actually the Director of Department of Hydropower and Power Systems under the Ministry of Economic Affairs. Our BPC is a utility. I sit there as one of the board directors. So
sorry, inadvertent error, sorry.
No worries, Pankaji. At the outset, before I go to the answering this straight, let me take this opportunity in wishing Dr. Jyoti Parikh, other distinguished panelists, as well as the participants. I have the honor and pleasure to be speaking on behalf of our secretary, because initially the invitation was meant for our secretary, the Ministry of Economic Affairs. And I'm glad to be speaking on his behalf in this very important, very relevant webinar, so to speak, on the cross-border electricity energy trade for the energy security of the South Asia. At the risk of repeating, since the subject matter is very compelling and important for the region, please let me recall the rationale. In many ways, the answer lies in some of my statements. There is much diversity, in the energy resources and the demands scenarios of the countries in South Asia. It is also evident that the energy security can be given the abundant renewable energy resources within the region, while each country is actually making concerted efforts to address the issues in the context of our own domestic demand and economic development. There is actually a compelling rationale and political will for the countries to pursue a shared vision in fostering mutually beneficial solutions through grid integration and innovative power trading mechanisms. The key element in promotion of or facilitation of a power trade through common sort of a power pool will not only help the region in bringing the cost of supply to the competitive prices, but will also help to address the larger concerns of the climate change by adopting a clean and sustainable energy resources, such as the shared vision of having an interconnected, integrated grid through an open, efficient, rule-based, transparent energy market will therefore provide an opportunity for enhancing the energy security of the region, and will also immensely benefit by import, export of power to sustain our own growing economies and enhance, at the end, prosperity of our people. There are great areas in which the regional cooperation is very imperative, especially looking from the point of complementarity situations like the hydropower resources from Bhutan and Nepal, for instance, in meeting a peak summer demand and also enhancing the regional grid stability by providing so-called as balancing power through harnessing hydropower, which is in abundance. But on the other hand, some of our mountainous countries receiving a power from friendly neighbors in the south during the dry winters, when incidentally the demand in these countries are much lower. Therefore, Bhutan has actually achieved close to over 100% electrification, especially through the grid interconnections, which is powered predominantly by the hydropower plants. Our peak demand has actually touched barely over 400 megawatts in the last 2 years. There has been a slight decrease during the COVID situation, but we are actually seeing exponential growth in the demand with a major economic impetus being initiated as part of the post-COVID pandemic economic recovery. While our current generation capacity has reached in excess of 2.3 gigawatt, but the firm power is around 0.4 gigawatt, given the inherent the issues of run-of-the-river schemes of hydropower plants in our country. So currently in the South Asia region, if I may, the India-Bhutan relationship in the hydropower cooperation is a success story of a mutually beneficial cooperation. The cross-border electricity trade of electricity between Bhutan and India has been going seamlessly for many decades, and it's expected to further expand with more projects in advanced stage of completion. One of the key developments on this front, as we see it has been the guidelines that was recently issued by the India for the cross-border electricity trade of electricity. As just earlier this year, the procedures for facilitating the cross-border trade was issued. This clearly indicates the India's willingness to provide an enabling environment for cross-border electricity trade at a regional level. The only issue now, as we see it, is how to operationalize at a regional power trade level. Time and again, in many forums, countries in the region have expressed their willingness. It is now the matter of translating that into a coherent political action and buy-in by our respective governments. Further, it is equally important to leverage the common endeavor with the necessary infrastructures, the progressive policies, enabling regulatory frameworks. We understand that many studies have been carried out in the past, and in some cases, studies are still underway on how some of these imperatives could be achieved. Therefore, the regional cooperation is the answer to achieving a regional energy security and combating the climate change in a collective manner. We really appreciate the support bodies like USAID, which through SARI EI programs and other initiatives like Asia Edge, USA has been giving a much needed traction to realize the energy trade to ensure energy security is enhanced or achieved within this region. I hope indirectly I'm able to actually give some points on the questions Alokji has actually raised. And I look forward to further discussions on some of the other questions that we were informed will be asked in a reverse order in the latest part of this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you. We will, is Mr. Shahi there? Mr. Shahi, have you joined yet? Are you able to hear us? Probably not. So let's go to Mr. Madhu Prasad Bethuwal then. Mr. Bethuwal, same question for you, sir. What benefits do you see and what potential do you see for the region and for Nepal?
Thank you, sir. First of all, I would like to thank you, the organizers, for providing opportunity to speak in this very important topic, cross-border electricity trade and energy security in the South Asia. Good morning and namaskar, distinguished panelists, organizers, and distinguished participants. Of course, we talked more, our friends from the Bangladesh and Bhutan, as well as Dr. Jyoti mentioned the various advantages that we could receive from the cross-border electricity trade, and similar advantage benefit that Nepal will receive from cross-border electricity trade, as mentioned earlier. As mentioned, you see, Nepal is hydro-dominant system for providing, meeting electricity demand to our people. Of course, in monsoon season, we can generate more power, and in summer season, we will have a less runoff, and we could not generate more power as we need. And so we can import power during the summer season, and during the monsoon season, we can export the generated power to our neighboring participant countries like India and Bangladesh. So this will help us to manage our energy resources in an optimal manner, and of course, it will enhance our grid security, as well as we can provide reliable electricity to our customers. As you all know, we have faced severe load shedding, power shortage in the last 4-5 years back, which is around 18 to 20 hours in a day, single day. So thanks to the government of India, that we were able to import power from the grid, interconnected grid, and we are able to supply required power to our customers. Of course, if we could build, optimize grid infrastructure in power projects, then it will, of course, reduce the generation cost as well as energy cost to us. And with the several projects that we have that is still harnessed, if we could generate those projects, it will create opportunities to our people, as well as renewable energy in our region could contribute would contribute to manage greenhouse gases to a lower limit if we could share these various energy resources in our region. So these are some benefits that we could get from cross-border electricity trade in our region.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Bidwal. And welcome, Mr. Shahi. Mr. Shahi, we are going to go to Dr. Pereira, and then we're going to come to you, sir. Dr. Pereira, the question for you is again the same. What benefits and potential do you see for cross-border energy trade in the region, and specifically what benefits do you see for Sri Lanka?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alok.
Yeah, Mr. Shahi, we are going to hear from Dr. Pereira, and then after that, you, Mr. Shahi.
Okay.
Yeah. Mr. Pereira, please. Dr.
Yes,
Pereira.
yes, thank you very much. I think when it comes to cross-border energy trade, Sri Lanka is some kind of an outlier for the simple reason that we simply don't have interconnections with any country. One reason being that, excuse me. Sorry about that. There was some interruption. Sorry about that. Okay. Being an island, having any cross-border connection has always been a difficult task. We have been discussing with our Indian counterparts for quite some time to have a DC link between Sri Lanka and India, which has gone through the initial planning stages, but other than that, we don't really have anything to offer in terms of cross-border trade. But doesn't mean that Sri Lanka cannot benefit from connections with other grids in the region, particularly when the current government has embarked on very ambitious renewable energy targets. And if we had some backup supply from the grids in the region, obviously, our task would have been quite easy. Much easier than what we are facing now, at least. And also, I think in terms of cost, now, as you probably know, we run on a system which has about 1/3 of hydro energy. And also we have a coal plant which provides, in terms of energy, of course, in some days, it can provide up to about 60% of our total energy demand. And also we have thermals, which are basically diesel fired combined cycle plants. So what I'm trying to say is that, most of our energy generation, when it comes to thermal, are quite expensive in terms of cost of generation. And if we had some interchange with other systems, obviously we could be able to make our demand probably at a cheaper cost, because we can benefit from the enormous amount of cheap power that is being generated elsewhere, including India in particular. So I think this is one of the benefits I can see. I suppose it's not only for Sri Lanka, even for the other countries, it's this case. And also in terms of the stability of our grid, I think a cross-border connection would certainly help. Other than that, I don't really have a lot to offer in terms of comments. These are the initial comments that I could think of, in response to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pereira. I think that challenge you mentioned is certainly a big one, and we'll discuss that later for sure. Mr. Shahi, before you joined us, sir, I'd asked each of the country's representatives to talk about what potential benefit or potential they see for cross-border energy trade in the region, and specific benefit they see for their own country as well. And so we did hear from Bhutan, we heard from Bangladesh, we heard from Nepal and Sri Lanka, and you're representing India, sir.
Thank you, Alok. I am sorry I got late because my car got stuck up in waterlogged road for quite some time, and then I had to leave that car and then make alternate arrangement. I just heard Mr. Pereira. Please convey my best wishes to Ms. Pereira, Basanta Pereira, because we keep in touch with her quite often on various discussions that we hold normally in the Power Secretaries Roundtable. Coming to the point, I think we have enormous benefits and enormous potential that could be derived and that could be harnessed through mutual cooperation in South Asia. That's the assignment, that's the job on a part-time basis I have been doing for the last almost 11, 12 years, using the World Bank platform as senior energy advisor to the bank. And then we assessed, we have natural resources in different countries, hydro resource in Bhutan, hydro resource in Nepal, and solar in India, hydro in India, thermal in India, wind in our case in India, and wind as well as some other potentials in Sri Lanka. Only thing is that for the last many years, all these countries, including India, we have been trying to solve our problem through liquid fuel, diesel, which has been the consequence. And therefore, from the time we started discussing of mutual cooperation, things have changed. In case of Bangladesh, we are now able to transfer about 1200 megawatt of power. In case of Nepal, it has hydro resource, but then when hydro is not there, like now it is there, but when hydro is not there, out of 1400 megawatt that they have the peaking power, we are able to send at almost 900 to 1000 megawatt during off season of the rainy season. So therefore, from climate change point of view, this arrangement is such a great arrangement of mutual cooperation on a regional basis that it can replace. It has been replacing, but it can replace further, including fossil fuel. Suppose India, out of almost 400,000 megawatt, 383,000 megawatt, 200,000 megawatt plus is coal. With solar emergence and with hydro support from Bhutan, hydro support from Nepal, the whole thing, even for Indian power sector, can make a big difference. So therefore, it is mutual interdependence. It's not the question of India having everything and giving to others. All these interconnections that we are trying to do and we have done, and we have made reasonable success in the last 2 years. We are on the basis that it is not that only India will be sending power or exporting power. No, India will be receiving also. Even with Nepal at present arrangement, we have a system of banking, and sometimes when we need hydropower and they are surplus, we take hydropower. Only recently, the facility has been extended also to have transaction through power exchange, and we have played a great role in that, convincing Government of India in further accommodating this instrument of power trade, that is power exchange, and with with Nepal, it has already started happening. So the potentials are huge. It will bring in a lot of economic benefit. It would replace costly fuel. It would replace fuels which are fossil fuels and therefore carbon linked. So it is climate change concerns that can be addressed and is being addressed. Potential is huge. So we have to only, like just now I heard Mr. Pereira saying, interconnection. I think I have been personally involved with Power Grid on that. We had a couple of meetings in Sri Lanka on this subject. Last time I visited Sri Lanka, and after that Corona has started. This was one of the important subjects, because till now we were only talking of interconnection submarine, which was to be very costly. Now Power Grid has come out with an idea that it can be overhead transmission, which may be much less costly and affordable. So therefore, Once interconnections are established, this to and fro movement of power, Sri Lanka has huge wind potential, and therefore that will be of help to India. And so from India, we can, whatever extra power we can send to Sri Lanka, we can do. So that's the idea we are working. Considerable progress has been made, but just as a kickoff, this is the point, because you have several segments of your questions. So be linked to your questions that you have outlined. I will respond to specific issues, but in general, this cooperation will be a win-win situation for everybody, and more economically, and with security point of view, energy security point of view, and more importantly, from climate change point of view, it is a solid answer to climate change CO2 concerns in South Asia. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shahi. We'll just talk briefly about the challenges now, and I'm going to begin this time with Dr. Pereira. And of course, Dr. Pereira has already mentioned the big challenge as far as Sri Lanka is concerned, but perhaps you can repeat that and talk about other challenges as well. Dr. Pereira.
The question again, please.
Challenges. What are the key challenges and issues that you see for the trade? And of course, the one obvious issue you have already stated, which is transmission links.
I think Mr. Shah already mentioned one, which is the enormous cost that we had to face in building an interconnection. I think that has been in discussion for quite some time. I think one of the main reasons why this interconnection project got stalled was also because of the enormous cost that we had to spend on that. And I think, like Mr. Shah said, the Indian counterparts have come up with some proposals, which would significantly lower the cost of the interconnection. And unfortunately, because of the COVID situation, I think the discussions have not proceeded for the last couple of years, right? And also, again, unlike most of the countries which are represented here, an interconnection in our case would either mean an undersea cable connection, or I think there is a possibility of some kind of overhead connection also, which is what I believe the Indian counterparts have been discussing for some time. Either way, it's going to be very costly in terms of in comparison to a land-based transmission line, whichever the voltage that you are talking about. So that is one challenge. Along with that, I think you also have the difficulties in construction, the actual civil engineering works, when it comes to undersea construction works. Other than that, I don't see any special issue that is facing Sri Lanka in terms of the connections.
Other than that very significant issue, of course. Let's go to Mr. Bethual now from Nepal. Mr. Bethual, the big challenges from your point of view?
In fact, we have made significant progress regarding cross-border electricity trading, especially with India. We have signed power trade agreement. We have prepared transmission line master plan. We have identified pooling stations for the cross-border trading. And even with Bangladesh, we have signed MOU for enhancing cross-border electricity trading. And as you mentioned, one of our IPPs, they are trying to export power to the Bangladesh, and they are having discussion with the PBTV Bangladesh for having PPA. The project is Upper Karnali. So still the progress that could happen, that could be expedited, it could happen because of some issues. There are some progress in cross-border trading, especially cross-border infrastructure is limited. And if you want to export power to Bangladesh, cooperation from the government of India is crucial. And in fact, we are discussing to have a trilateral discussion to resolve this issue. It may take some time, probably strong political consensus is required. And I think we need to continue to tell our political leaders about the various benefits that we could receive from cross-border trading. It should not be one-time discussion. It should be discussed regularly to our political leaders so that conducive legal frameworks could be made that can enhance this cross-border electricity trading. And we need to have also, we need to harmonize our grid so that reliable power supply could be done. And also, in the context of Nepal, we prefer, though we prefer to have access to our market, power exchanges market, but we also prefer to have power banking, energy banking, considering the more generation during the monsoon season and less generation during the winter season. So if we could address those issues, or at least we have long-term power purchase agreement, especially for the monsoon season, then I think cross-border electricity trading will be more in coming days. So my understanding is we need to enhance our institutional capacity too. And I think it's not a one-time job. It is to be continued. And forum like this and support from SARI or USAID regarding this issue will be crucial, so that technical capacity will be enhanced. And also, I think investment also required for power projects, including cross-border transmission line, in constructing transmission cross-border transmission line along with the substations. They are quite important. The aim is we need to develop a level playing field. We need to develop a level playing field in our region for having successful cross-border electricity. And also governments in our region should be motivated to revise their energy mix policy, energy exchange policy for promoting cross-border power trade in the region. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dorji, if I can come to you next, what are the big challenges that you see going forward and from your experience already?
Thank you, Alokji. A very good morning to Dr. Sai. In terms of the challenges, I think we have a bucket full of challenges, so to speak. Nonetheless, I did actually allude at in terms of the bilateral experience that we have over 4 decades. But in terms of really looking at what I call as a seamless, rule-based market, I suppose what we all eventually driving towards is a free sort of a market. In that, yes, we do see that the market segments, especially in India, is actually evolving. We are yet to see the maturity of that. And then we have also seen through various, again, initiatives being taken by the government of India in terms of, going for even the derivatives markets as well. So essentially, we look at these as a niche sort of a product, including the ancillary markets. But while we talk about all this sort of the opportunity as an opportunity, the critical sort of the constraints in capitalizing some of these opportunities are basically the infrastructure. I do echo what has been asserted by our Nepalese colleague. In terms of having open access, we do understand that for instance the transmission integration between India and Bhutan is synchronous, we do have a capacity in excess of 5,000 megawatts already built and operational. But what's constraining of actually fully utilizing these infrastructures is also the idea that, unless we have the bankable sort of market, then where do we actually seek the investment in terms of actually doing the for us, it's basically a hydropower. So in that sense, we do see the idea that unless the markets, the rules, the procedures, governing these sort of free market concepts, unless there is certain clarity, obviously to attract the investment, so-called as to make it a bankable investment, is going to be the key constraint in terms of, so to speak, in terms of egg and chicken issue. But nonetheless, as I did mention, that we are actually looking a very progressive sort of the cooperation in terms of with the completion of some of the ongoing mega projects. Obviously, yes, at this point we do export in terms of 70% of our total generation, but then we do foresee quite a sizable constraints, especially during the lean season. So obviously, it's not always be one way sort of the cross-border electricity trade that we foresee moving forward, and that's the diversity that we are trying to capitalize on in terms of the India having obviously lower sort of peaking demands, especially during the peak seasons in some of these mountainous countries. So obviously, we do see having a sort of a clarity in terms of how do we actually capitalize on some of these diversities is one. And then the other thing is, again, for instance, we do understand that Bangladesh has a huge power appetite, energy appetite. And for that matter, we have been discussing over years in terms of how we could actually, garner, how we could actually pursue export of electricity from, directly from Bhutan to Bangladesh. And obviously, the India has to come in, because India has to provide a transit right. So we are still waiting, watching. In many sense, we do understand that Nepal and Bangladesh have actually entered into a bilateral agreement, and then they have approached the government of India in terms of giving according a transit right. So obviously, these are something which are moving towards a positive directions in terms of evolutions of some of these rules that may actually have to change, so to speak, instead of really relying on the conventional ways of actually doing a transaction. But we do understand the complexity that is actually going into whenever we do cross-border electricity trade. So for us, in short, the important factor is how these sort of the transit rights, the required infrastructures, the rules around the so-called as a notional common market for the South Asia, things are still evolving, and we do keep watch on these very closely. And at the same time, it's also an opportune time even for the Bhutan, while we speak about the volumes of the demand. But obviously, as we move forward, we do see the demand picking up in Bhutan itself. So we are also trying to sort of replicate so-called as the energy market, the domestic market in itself, so that once all the governments, all the countries are are prepared or ready for, so to actually capitalize on these diversities, that Bhutan is fully prepared into entering that, and for which we'll have to start investing. Because at this point, although we are exporting clean and renewable energy to India, obviously these are tied to bilateral agreements. So obviously, if we really want to look at the free market sort of a concept in near future, obviously we'll have to augment the capacity, invest in building more infrastructures, including the generation capacities, and obviously. This is how I see it, because at this point of time, unless the respective countries are able to capitalize on their own competitive edge, obviously we'll have to depend on one country, for meeting some of these shortages. So we see that collectively we'll have to move towards sort of capitalizing on some of these, leveraging on some of these diversities, rather than as Dr. Sahib mentioned very candidly that it's not the energy independence, but rather it's energy dependence, the moving forward. Thank you, Dr. Alokji.
Thank you. Dr. Moniruzzaman, challenges that you see, sir, from where you stand?
Thank you. Most of the point already covered. I want to say one point that need to be addressed, especially in the operational stage. For operation and maintenance purpose, you see there's a difference between the European Union and Asian region. They have the border is open and it's very easy to maintain all these things. But between two countries, we have the no man's land as well as the different types of safety and security protocol. So if the grid is failed or grid synchronization is not established, or our gas pipelines, different types of failure, leakage or accident, how these things has to be managed. I think there should be a operational and maintenance protocol that then both parties, both countries will be able to respond in crisis. I want to add this point. Thank you very much.
Dr. Shahi, the big challenges as you see them, Dr. Shahi?
I think we have covered many of the challenges in the last few years. It is not a common type of challenge with reference to every country. Like Mr. Pereira mentioned, I mentioned, challenge in case of Sri Lanka has been connectivity. It has been technology of connectivity, cost of connectivity. So unless you have connectivity, you have transmission system, you can't think of trading, because for the present, we do not have wireless power trading. So we have the difficulty. Challenge in case of Nepal has been, which is now not there, but even as late as 2012, when I started looking at it very seriously, though we looked at it even when I was in the Ministry of Power in Government of India. But the challenge in case of Nepal was, and as I said, now it has gone in the background, that Nepal in general, in the society, in population, in media, it was an issue. Should Nepal allow hydro potential to be developed into power, to export power to India? Why should it do? Why should Nepal develop hydro projects for exporting to India? And we had case study of Bhutan to indicate to them. We used to take the discussions that see how mutually it benefits. But that issue is no longer there. In all democratic countries, there will always be views and counter views. When we started connecting with Bangladesh, 2009-10, and I was personally again involved into this off the political or diplomatic track. And then the idea at that time was that how it will be taken in Bangladesh. The issue was, should Bangladesh be dependent on India for power supply? So that sort of how much it should be dependent on other countries. So that there the question was to raise the level of confidence. And when one 500 megawatt happened, that issue was no longer there. When another 500 megawatt happened, another 200 megawatt has happened, and those are not the issues. So one is a political challenge, government side and non-government opposition side. Wherever you have democracy, you will have different point of view, and therefore a narrative has to be the correct narrative. I think for South Asian countries, it is important to recognize for everybody, including for India, that it is not the question of creating too much of dependence, which is unreliable. No, it's a respectful mutual interdependence, When we get power from Nepal, when we need, and Nepal gets power when they need. When we started discussing Nepal, question was, Nepal should get its power for its people first. It can export only when it has excess power to export. So therefore, huge transmission system over there. I think that type of narrative for general acceptance of people to take care of this. So this is first challenge is that there should be at a larger scale understanding of this situation, that in energy, if you have mutual interdependence rather than energy independent or energy dependent, mutual interdependence. And as I explained in my while answering your first query, that the way natural resources are located in different parts of this region, this mutual interdependence would become inevitable. Definitely it will become inevitable because resources are there in different countries which could be harnessed and could benefit. The second is the technical. Like all the diesel-based power generation could be replaced today. We have power in the region. And there is no need for depending on high-cost dollar-denominated crude and derivative of crude. In the whole region, it can be done. But then it needs transmission. Like if we want to have larger amount of trade between India and Bangladesh, beyond 1200 megawatt, we do not have the transmission system. Transmission infrastructure is very important, interconnecting, and we will come to, I think one of the question is how to go about it. So that is another constraint that is. The third one is that if you want to scale up, take for example, Nepal. Nepal today peak is about 1400 megawatt, but Nepal needs much more power. Nepal has created a mission. I have been part of that process, which we are doing for last 4 or 5 years, monitoring the domestic transmission and distribution infrastructure. You can have more power. You can have Dhalkebar Muzaffarpur 400 kV system, which has a capacity of 1000 megawatt, but we are using about 200 to 50 megawatt only, because to get power, you need to consume power, and to consume power, you have to go to the right end of the consumption. That means it requires internal intra-country transmission system, intra-country sub-transmission system, and distribution infrastructure. At this point of time, Nepal has taken a vision that in next 5 years, and it was in 2018, Nepal should have 5,000 number. Today it is 1400 plus megawatt. It should rise to 3,000. It should rise to 5,000 megawatt. And for that to happen, huge amount of transmission, in-country transmission, not the cross-country transmission. Cross-country transmission should be. Then there was a hurdle. That hurdle has been removed today. That we got Mr. Dorji saying that point, and he appreciated also. After a lot of a struggle, and again in that process I was fully involved in the government of India to agree to trilateral. That means power can be produced in Nepal, power can be produced in Bhutan, but it could be sold to Bangladesh. It could be sold when time comes to Sri Lanka if interconnection is there. So that has been agreed. Now we have to give shape to these things. So these have been the constraints. Some of the now exchange was not allowed earlier. And the latest guideline, through exchange also power can be purchased and sold. So I think mutual confidence also has to rise, and some of the steps have been taken. I will narrate that in your other question. What are all the things that have been done to create institutional arrangement, formal and informal, so that the level of confidence, at least in energy. I may tell you that energy, we have covered considerable ground in tackling all these challenges, but I will not say that everything is over. We have to implement many of these things so that the level of confidence further increases. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shahi. We'll now move to the question of what are the arrangements or mechanisms or forums that we need in order to make progress in this area, to move towards a market or interconnection infrastructure, etc. And this time I'm going to begin with Mr. Dorji from Bhutan. So the order will be Mr. Dorji, Mr. Betwal, and then Mr. Pereira, and then Mr. Monir Zaman, and then Mr. Shahi after that. Yeah. So Mr. Dorji.
Thank you, Alokji. In terms of the forum or in terms of the institutional sort of mechanism, again, to answer your question, takes me to the experience, the time-tested bilateral cooperation that we have had over 4 decades with the government of India. Things would have actually continued smoothly had it not been for the technical reasons for delays of some of these projects, the bilateral projects that has been delayed innumerably, running into, having suffering cost overruns. Obviously, so these things, are done in a good faith, in the goodwill for the mutual beneficial, but somehow we are not able to actually sort of take a full control of how to actually, take these projects forward. But nonetheless, yes, the dialogues are on. Two government is actually taking very close watch, discussing at the various levels, and in order to see that these projects are at least completed in a timely manner. But then these institutions are much at the broader or at the higher level. So obviously, the India is such a big country in which they have the other competing priorities. So the engagement at the required level, we often than not, we find it constraining in terms of some of these are being delayed for a lack of indecisions for the decision. So in many sense, we understand that the kind of forum, the kind of the technical level discussions, dialogues, mechanisms that has been established between the India and Bangladesh, India and Nepal is at a technical level. But with Bhutan, I don't know, I won't call that as a unique sort of the arrangement, but the important thing is that we have the mutual trust and confidence, and that's why we have at the highest political level in terms of dealing with some of these issues on the bilateral cooperations on the energy sector. Yes, informally, this is something which we have been pursuing under the IRADe, under the USAID, under the SARI EI, as well as Dr. Sahi may be elaborating on this idea of actually, the roundtables of the power secretaries. So these are more or less some sort of informal sort of settings in which we are able to, discuss with an open mind, obviously with the intentions to provide some of the impetus in which we could actually then leverage on, by which then the governments of the various countries could actually, take on board in terms of resolving some of these issues. So essentially, the way I see it is, we have talked about quite a number of times in terms of, in terms of what are the necessary ingredients to have a seamless sort of a cross-border electricity trade. And obviously, in the earlier phases of the SARI EI, we have looked at the both the technical as well as the regulatory, the laws, the policies, and obviously we did come out with some of the gaps. And obviously, while all this, where do we take this in terms of ensuring that each country is actually able to close up some of these gaps? So at this point, what we call as, in terms of the regulatory forum, what they have is a SAFI. I'm not too sure how that is being recognized, especially at the governmental level. Even through the SARC, we have tried to bring in this necessity of creating an enabling regulatory regime. Obviously, when you look at the rationale of why government of India had come out with the CBET guidelines, obviously one of the main caveat in that, as we understand, is to safeguard the regulatory predictability, so clarity. So obviously, the way we see it is, it has to be a sort of a concurrent sort of approach, not just limiting to the government sort of level, but at the same time, some of these at the institutional level forums, I think through the SARI EI, again, we did discuss in terms of creating a transmission utility forum, the energy market forums. So obviously, these are the building blocks in many sense that moving forward, where each of these forums could actually then differentiate in terms of what are the technical, the policy, the regulatory challenges that needs to be addressed. So obviously, so where I see this, these are the necessary sort of the ingredients or the building blocks that has to then transcend beyond the political boundaries. And obviously, the governments will have to play a bigger role in terms of harmonizing, synthesizing, and then at the end, the idea that to have so-called as a seamless power market, a regional power market. where we are, the idea that we are not necessarily have to define the colors of the electrons. So because the electricity is a fungible thing. So the way we see this, these institutional forums, be it at the institutional levels, be it at the governmental or the departmental or the agency level, this has to initiate and sustain. Otherwise, the way we see it is every time, because much of these tend to come up only when we do have some sort of a donor-funded sort of projects. Otherwise, then the utility of these sort of forums cease to exist. So obviously, there has to be a political sort of support from the highest level of the governments of the various countries in terms of ensuring that these sort of forums are sustained, because much of the technical level sort of discussions could transpire in these sort of forums, and obviously the government actually requires these sort of inputs and then scale up to the highest government level in order to have the political sort of support on these sort of initiatives. So I see that as one way to actually, and we are on the right track, so to speak, in terms of creating some of these institutional level forums. The only constraint that we have is, for now, yes, there has been a lot of drive, especially by the with the support of the donors, but obviously we'll have to institutionalize these sort of forums so that this becomes a sustained sort of efforts in the larger interests, the common interests. I call it as a shared vision of the South Asia. Thank you, Alokji.
Thank you, Mr. Dorji. Mr. Bethuwal, from your point of view, what do we need to do in terms of platforms, mechanisms, arrangements to move forward?
Thank you, Mr. Alokji. In fact, we are moving in the right direction. Though slow, we are moving in a positive direction to enhancing mutual cooperation, especially in the energy sector among our neighboring countries. And our bilateral trading mechanism need to be enlarged to trilateral and to the regional level later on. But it is to be not in overnight. It cannot be done overnight, but gradually it is to be converted to a regional level. So we need to create later on regional institutions that help us for regional planning of the grid transmission line, energy projects, so that energy resources in our region could be optimally utilized, which is the key concern. So we need to we need to see the global commitment for climate change mentioned in the Paris Agreement as well, and to optimize our energy resources, regional entity could be better for planning power projects, power in energy infrastructures. Further, we need to harmonize the laws, rules for power trading. Independent institution in our region, probably later days, would be essential. That could provide transparent power trading in the region. Forum like this, as well as the forum, BMSTEC forum or the BBIN forum, this could, in fact, help us to analyze the various issues, our challenges, shortcomings, and the threats, as well as the opportunities that we have in our region. So continuous discussion in the forum like this probably would be a good solution. That in fact help us to understand each other and also share information to each other and enlighten us how our laws, our regulations could be improved, could be new, if required, new act could be placed, and discussions like this would help us for refining our laws that ultimately help seamless cross-border power trading in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bethual. And before I go to Dr. Pereira for his comments here, I should mention that we're going to have 3 more webinars. One is going to focus on market development, one is going to be focusing on institutional arrangements, and the third one is going to be on transmission infrastructure. Dr. Pereira, how do we move forward? What do you see as next steps in terms of arrangements, mechanisms, forums?
Well, I don't have a lot to add to what has already been said by the other speakers. I can just echo some of the things that Mr. Dorji mentioned. I think in this business, bilateral cooperation works best, between countries. I'm not trying to minimize the cooperation among all countries, but as Dr. Shahi mentioned earlier, at the end of the day, you have to have a connectivity. Right. So I think that works best, when you have discussions and cooperation with between 2 countries. This is particularly true of Sri Lanka. Probably I'm biased here because, obviously our options are very limited to having connections with India. And of course, through which we can, of course, connect to other countries. I understand that. And also, I think it takes a lot of commitment from the governments. I think the governments also should understand. We can talk a lot. I think as technicians, technical people, we will understand the advantages and the problems and everything. But I think if there is no commitment from the higher levels of the government, the political commitment, it's very difficult to proceed. I think the government should understand the advantages of having connectivity among countries, especially in electricity exchange. If that takes place, I think still there are a lot of challenges that has to be overcome, but I'm sure if there's commitment on the people who are involved, I think we can certainly proceed. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Moni Ruzaman, what do you see as next steps in terms of forums, institutional arrangements, interconnections, etc.? Or how do we, let me rephrase it, mechanisms, arrangements, and forums, so that we can move towards market development and interconnection, etc.
I want to go with Dr. Pereira. I want to add one point. That is, at the end of the day, everybody is thinking about the cost advantage. So if this forum go for the demand analysis as a whole, not for India, not for Bangladesh, aggregate demand may be calculated by this forum, and then try to find out how the cost can be minimized, where should be the load center, where should be the power plant, so that transmission and distribution cost would be less. If it is established that this price advantage, if I produce power, suppose I am producing power and my cost of power is higher than the cross-border power, in that case, it will be a drive to move to cross-border power. So we can think in this way for market development. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent suggestion. I will now go to Dr. Shahi, practically for the last word, since we have about 4 or 5 minutes left. Dr. Shahi, if in a few minutes you can tell us your opinion on the next steps needed in terms of arrangements and mechanisms and forums beyond what has already been done.
No, I think it will be better to capture a lot that has been done. Some of the points came. You see, the informal arrangement, we have a champion process, South Asia. We are very senior people from different countries who have been in different fields, not only from bureaucracy or diplomatic group, but also from other NGOs and all that. They keep talking every 6 to 8 months. We meet and try to identify what are not only energy, other areas. So whole South Asia. So that is one. Power Secretary Roundtable we started in 2014, and almost every 6 months we have been doing under the same platform, World Bank, and that has been very useful because that is totally relaxed. It is not formal arrangement. People can understand each other. They can talk frankly. and do things. So therefore, so many changes that have happened in the policy levels, insofar as cross-border trade is concerned, you can see the outcome of that. And these power secretary roundtable also facilitate bilateral and trilateral discussions beyond the meetings and discussion that we have there. I think in the formal setup, when we started a little deeper interaction with Bangladesh somewhere in 2009, end 2010 beginning, and when this Friendship Power Company was conceived between NTPC and BPDB of Bangladesh, we suggested that let there be a regular arrangement and therefore joint steering committee co-chaired by power secretaries. The joint steering committee co-chaired by power secretary, joint working group and joint technical team emerged out of Bangladesh initiative, and that has happened now in almost all the places. Nepal, we had power trade agreement, but we have joint steering committee, joint working group, joint technical team. With Sri Lanka, we have now joint working group. Myanmar, we have joint working group. And Mr. Dorji rightly said that Bhutan was our just initial interact cooperation, and we presented Bhutan as a model of excellent bilateral cooperation. Therefore, at that time, it was taken so high level, is a ministerial level. I have been trying that when Sankos happens, with Sankos, we will start the same mechanism of joint steering committee, joint working group, and joint technical team. But short of that, I think we keep in touch informally. I keep in touch. That is also an arrangement, you can say. There is hardly a month when I don't talk at least twice or thrice to the power secretaries of all these countries and try to convey informally to our power secretary if there is something to be done. Mr. Karki, I have been in touch with him every other day of Nepal. Recently, he joined as power secretary. So I think these informal and formal arrangements have helped a lot, but I wouldn't say that that is perfect. It always needs improvement, and depending on the outcome and depending on the difficulties that we face, we always keep reviewing what needs to be done. So I think that is quite possible. Good thing is that all power secretaries are on telephones whenever they need, and right up to joint technical teams. So 3-tier arrangement. Take, for example, right now, Bangladesh has been, and India has been working on that 765 transmission system. Joint technical team, even during this COVID period, have already had meetings. Even power secretaries roundtable in this COVID period, online, we have been able to do 2 or 3, and one more will be done very shortly. So I think these are the mechanisms that need to happen. What needs to be done is that, of course, we have to discuss how do we raise the level of interconnection? How do we fund interconnection? How do we raise? Because if we keep our interconnections capacity limited, and that is where the attempt is. With Bangladesh, the attempt is. With Bhutan, of course, we have a good capacity today. With Nepal, new lines are coming. Bhutabal, Gorakhpur. Again, the other day I had talked, only yesterday I had a talk with Power Secretary of Nepal. In their cabinet, it was pending, and it has been approved. The joint venture between Power Grid and NEA, and that line should come. That will be the third line, in fact, where you have 400 kV, Dhalkebar, Muzaffarpur, then one line will be there with Arun 3 project, and this third line with Nepal. So I think that will, so it's going on. See, we got the study done jointly by all, and the potential is almost 48,000 megawatt in next 10, 15, 20 years. In the next 5 years, I think 14,000 megawatt of interconnections have been identified. We need to pursue, and these mechanisms are quite helpful. But development of mechanisms, working of mechanisms with certain degree of flexibilities, these are all open question all the time. And since this level is right at the secretary level, that is helpful. If there is something they create. Recently, about a year back, we created this arrangement of joint working group of regulators. This came out of Power Secretary Roundtable. And we said, we tried to find out how this quasi-judicial body will interact. So we found a solution, SAFIR, South Asia Forum of Infrastructure Regulator. And this SAFIR, at our instance, at our request, that decided to constitute a joint working group. I think only next, on 3rd, there is a meeting. I attend that meeting normally, all the meetings, and they are already making good progress. This is another area, grid code and market design. These are the 2 subjects that have been chosen. So I think in power sector, we are trying to move forward. Of course, there would be difficulties here and there. Sometimes there are misunderstandings on things and we try to set right. The mechanism to understand mechanism exists. How do we get if there is a gap in understanding? When the first cross-border power trade guideline was issued by India, it went into a lot of sort of misunderstanding. Mr. Dorji is here. We organized a conference immediately and we got that. It took us about a year, but we got the whole cross-border power trade guideline changed. Then the recently designated authority procedure, it has taken again time, but then whole thing got changed. So I think we have today a mechanism to really understand misunderstanding. And at power secretary level, today any power secretary of any country, at least he is free always to me and to some of us to tell that this is wrong, India is doing wrong. And we have a mechanism to convey that this is not going on all right. So therefore, interaction with MEA here, interaction with power secretary's department here, they have been helpful and that process will continue. I think, as I said right in the beginning, the level of confidence about mutual cooperation has to continuously improve. It should never get into any derailment. Benefits of economic nature and non-economic nature are enormous. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shahi. If I can request the panelists, if they can be with us for just 3 or 4 more minutes. IRADe has requested that we take a few questions. We'll just take 2 or 3 in the next 3 minutes. So 1 minute answers only.
Alok, just to interrupt, also request all the panelists to put on the camera because we missed Shahi Saab the last time. So
if you could please put on your, Mr. Dorji, a question from you. What is the current status of CBET between Bhutan and Bangladesh?
Thank you, Alokji. We had initiated what we call as a trilateral sort of cooperation, and to that extent, we did exchange the draft memorandum of understanding way back in 2000. I forgot the year also. Now it's been quite some time. With the recent visit of our Honorable Prime Minister to Bangladesh, and also with the visit of Honorable Prime Minister of India to Bangladesh about a couple of months back, the initiative has been reignited. We are taking up with the Bangladesh as well as with the government of India, just as to see whether we could actually come to a common understanding to begin with, coming up with the MOU, first the MOU, and then based on the MOU, we could actually initiate some of the implementation modalities in which most of these issues that we have talked about today could be addressed through by creating a sort of a technical task force through that MOU. So yes, we have been pushing from our end, and hopefully we'll be able to hear back from, especially from our partners, both the government of India as well as the government of Bangladesh soon. So at this point, pretty much from our end, this is the status, but we are ready, and in fact we have kept the project ready in case if that comes up. Then obviously we should be able to actually implement, execute in the shortest time possible. Thank you, all of you.
Question from Mr. Betuwal from Suman Bhutatoki, who's from Nepal, wants to know if there is a possibility of doing power exchange with India.
Yes, recently Government of India has published procedure for approval in facilitating import-export cross-border of electricity. As per this, we have submitted proposals to the designated entity, power trading of some of the electricity generated in 4 or 5 projects. So with the approval from the Ministry of Power, we hope the power, excess power generated in Nepal could be exported.
There are a number of other questions. We have taken note of those and we will try to get opinions on those and answers to those. But thank you very, very much. It's been a good opening session. But as Dr. Shahi said, there have been many discussions before. So I would say not a continuation of those discussions. And we are happy to play a role in facilitating this. But for this session, we owe gratitude to all the panelists. And that includes Dr. Munir Zaman, Mr. Dorji, Dr. Shahi, Mr. Bhetwal, and Dr. Pereira. And of course, our thanks to USAID, which is Manali Zia Hazra, Mary Tyler Holmes, to IRADe, Mr. Pankaj Batra, Dr. Parekh, Rima Bhardan, Shivani, and to our own team of Kanan, Priyanka, Iqbal, etc. as well. Thank you very, very much. You will be receiving an email about the next few webinars. We hope you're able to join us, and please feel free to write back to us your feedback, things we should have covered, we didn't cover, etc., etc. Thank you very, very much again for joining us today.
Mr. Brara, we just, sorry to
much.
interrupt for a minute. Mr. Agarwal would like to present the vote of thanks.
I'm sorry about that. Mr. Agarwal, I'm sorry, I did not look at the agenda at the bottom. My apologies.
No issues, Mr. Alok. Thank you very much. And you made my task easy. Basically, I'll not repeat. I'll only say that I'd like to thank all the panelists individually for your valuable comments and insights on the subject. And they carry a lot of value. And I am sure that the participants have been immensely benefited from these discussions. I am extremely thankful to the participants for attending these discussions. There were more than 200 participants attended the webinar, and I am thankful to each one of you for attending this webinar and making it a big success. Thanks, Mr. Alok Barara and team from Powerline for associating with us in having this webinar and making it very interesting and informative. And as Mr. Barara stated during the event, this is the first webinar in the series of 4 webinars what we are going to have in association with Powerline during next 2 to 3 months, and you would come to know about these. Thanks to Dr. Jyoti Parekh, ED IRADe, for taking out some time from your busy schedule and rendering valuable comments and welcome address. Thanks Monali Zia Hazra, Regional Energy Manager and Clean Energy Specialist at USAID. As usual, the support from USAID in carrying out such activities and taking forward the subject of energy trade and energy security in South Asia. I'd also like to thank Mary Taylor Holmes, the acting IPO director at USAID, who was to make opening remarks at the start, however, could not participate due to some other engagements. I also thank USAID country managers from Bangladesh, Nepal, and Sri Lanka also for supporting the event. At the end, I'd like to thank my own colleagues in SARI EI team led by Mr. Pankaj Batra and particularly Rima, Shivani, Anuradha, and others in doing all this preparatory works. Thank you very much. And I stop here and refer it back to Mr. Alok.
Okay. I think, thank you again. And we are going to end the session. And we'll keep the screen on. If anyone of you has any comments, you can put them in the chat right now and we'll take care of those. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.